young German writer, and we are extremely optimistic, and everybody, also our representatives for the market, German language market, are just crazy for this new author, and everybody is enchanted, although the editor worked a lot with the author on the manuscript and shortened it, and but it's always a very thrilling moment to have the first book by somebody, and you can be sure if people in the publishing house are enthusiastic about it, that there will be a big interest also in the public and in the media for it. It's much easier, in fact, than having a good author who was proven to be successful during a long time, but never became a real bestseller. It's much easier to market a debut than the 10th book of an author who is already established but has never reached the peak.
Yes, we say rather cynically that an author who's never been published before has also never failed.
I would like to know what are the other parameters to be chosen as an author, besides writing abilities?
Promotability. Do they speak well? Do they have a good social network profile? Well, do they have a website? Do they blog? Do they tweet? You know, do they? Because part of the brave new world we're going into is, you know, you can do a lot of that self-promotion. You know, there are also, I mean, I'm not an expert, but for example, I believe the way to use Kate's, you know, she's an expert, but the way to use social networks is you comment on other people's blogs, people who are in the same kind of area that you want to be in, and you have to say interesting things, you have to be constructive, if you like, and then other people comment on yours, and then they start following you, and you start following them. I had a really weird experience. I started, someone told me how to start on Twitter, so I started tweeting. And then I was invited to be the guest on a weekly thing called Script Chat. It's for scriptwriters. And for an hour. So you get 10 questions, and you have to answer them in 140 characters. And then in the hour, there are more questions which you ask. And 24 hours later, I discovered I had more than 100 more people following me than I had 24 hours before. And you suddenly realize how easy it is. In fact, if you are prepared to give value to other people, to give useful information, to be interesting, then people will follow you. If you make, I mean, one of my clients wanted to self-publish a book, and I advised him against it because he didn't have a website, he didn't blog, he didn't tweet. And when I said you need to do those things, he got a terrific website, he read up about blogging, he started blogging, he started tweeting. Now he's very funny, he's very, very funny. And I would say, I probably retweet 1 out of every 4 of his tweets because they are genuinely funny, and I'm very happy for the people who follow me to read them. And he did a tweet recently when Tony Blair, our ex-Prime Minister, launched his book about Tony Blair. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was very funny. And apparently that went viral. That ended up by being read by millions of people. Trended. It was trended.
Does your deputy does he blog, tweet,
Oh no, she doesn't. So she doesn't. No. But it's not that important because, as Julian mentioned in the beginning, the advantage of the traditional publishing house is that we have this competence and experience in marketing, and we really take over the job of that, and we have all the connections to the media, and we also operate in social media, so we try everything to publicize new authors or old authors or whatever, to reach public by any means we can possibly think of. And
so yeah, it's writing ability, social networking ability, what else?
Yeah, promotability.
Well, it's the willingness also of an author to appear in person.
Yeah,
in
that's what I meant by the promotion. Do they speak well?
For example,
Well, he doesn't need to.
but
he exists.
from the
I
beginning.
saw him a couple of days ago.
Yeah, but already from the beginning he didn't.
No, he's a special case. I mean,
Yeah.
and he was successful in a time when all of this was really not at the level it is today. In the early 80s, authors really did not have this kind of star appearance that they do today. And he refused that right from the beginning, and well, he had a worldwide bestseller, and he really didn't need to. And maybe this was a technique or a strategy of his that made him even more interesting.
You're like J.D. Salinger.
Refusal. But I think today you don't get along with that.
Yeah. At the back.
Yes. Do you see any growth in the relations between self-publishing and the traditional world? How do you see it developing over the next couple of years?
Well, I would say there's a big growth in self-publishing going on at the moment. There are hundreds of new possibilities and platforms for authors to publish their, well, let's say, content or stories or whatever, manuscripts, without a traditional publishing house. I can only say that, speaking for a traditional publishing house, we try to cover up also the new media. We publish e-books, we publish audiobooks, we publish everything what is sort of suitable to the kind of literature that we publish at the moment. But, I mean, yeah, and Julian gave the argument that we still have the marketing and distribution capacity, which maybe you don't get if you do it yourself.
I mean, one of the things that many authors don't know is publishers have an uneasy relationship with bookshops and bookshop chains, because basically what a publisher wants is shelf space. They want to be allowed to occupy as much shelf space as possible. And I can't speak for Switzerland or Germany, but in Britain, if you want to be in a very prominent place in a big bookstore chain, you pay money. You could call it a bribe, you could call it business, but it costs you money. And if you're self-publishing, you have no chance of that at all. I think one of the biggest problems for authors who are self-publishing is they don't have the benefit of the kind of editorial eye. They don't have someone both experienced and objective who will look at the structure of the way the story is told, who will look at the use of language, who will point out, you know, there's a coincidence in this and it's not, you know, it's going to undermine the reader's interest. So, in fact, many self-published books are also unedited. And to that extent, you know, they don't read very well, so it becomes a kind of downward, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, a good editor is an incredibly important kind of colleague to writers. And there are many writers who basically rely hugely on their editors. And there are editors who will spend hundreds, possibly thousands of hours working with a writer on a book to get it to be as good as possible. Now, obviously, you're not going to spend 1,000 hours working on a book of an unknown author unless you think the book is going to be a huge bestseller. But it's an investment that publishers make. Now, there are also lots of freelance editorial services popping up everywhere to deal with this. The real problem is, you know, do you read their advertising copy and say, well, I like the sound of that, I'll go with them. And they may be very bad. You know, they may not be good. You really need to do your market research there. You need to find the names of some of the authors that they've edited, talk to them. But I think you can also do that about traditional publishers. You do that about agents. It's always much better to get a personal recommendation.
There was a question over there, sorry.
You actually just mostly answered it, but to find out those people, specifically the editors, that you would like to work with if you are thinking of going in that direction, is there a reliable source that's...
No, there's no obvious place to go. You need to use social networks. You know, you need to I mean, you can say to a freelance editor, are you talking about freelance editors or traditional publishing editors?
You said they're popping up, so it's interesting.
The freelance, you basically say, you know, can you give me the names of some of the books you've edited and some of the authors you've edited, and then you get hold of the book and you read it, and if you see it's full of, you know, bad writing and coincidences and, you know, so on, then you know they're no good.
Yeah.
So you've got to do that research. And if you've spent a long time labouring over your magnum opus, you really ought to invest time in it. And you know, if some publisher who's not really a big publisher says, yes, I'll publish your book and I'll pay you 50 euros advance, don't fall over with gratitude, you know, basically be very cynical about it and do the research again. How successful have you been? How many copies have you sold? They'll probably lie to you, but you know, you need to ask the questions.
How important are agents?
They can be very important, but I think if the quality of the writing is good enough, the better the quality of the writing in one sense, I think the easier it is for writers to connect directly with publishers. But a publisher is never going to offer you the best deal you can get.
Or just.
There's always room for improvement. You know, agents generally do earn their commission. For example, all the major agencies will have long fought over what we call boilerplate clauses with publishing groups. So we have clauses with, say, the Random House Group or HarperCollins or whoever, where we've tried to use the leverage available to us on authors that they want really badly to improve certain terms. So when we bring a new author to them, we insist on using the same terms as we got for a much bigger author. So in that sense, agents are valuable. I think I really liked what Gesine said about, you know, they publish authors, not books. Agents are the same. We represent authors, not books. We look to a long relationship. In fact, it's a generalization, but I think it's probably true that writers have longer relationships with their agents than they do with their publishers. In other words, they move publishers more often than they move agents.
Well, the situation is a little bit different in the German language countries. And there are only now in the last 10 years, agents have become very important. Before that, there was no agent, and the authors always directly approached a publisher. And this has changed a lot within the last years, but we still receive manuscripts directly from authors as well. And there's no difference in the treatment. We look at everything, no matter whether it comes from an agent, although, of course, if we know the agent and the agent has a very high profile, we sort of follow recommendations. This is a difference to somebody who just sends in a manuscript and has never been recommended by anybody. It's always good to have a person who recommends you, be it an agent or not. And I would say, I would doubt whether you make a worse deal if you come directly to the publisher.
I don't doubt it. I think you always make a worse deal if you go directly to a publisher. I have to say that, and Gesine has to say the opposite.
Because, I mean, in the beginning there might be a slightly higher advance that you get if the agent negotiates. But in the end, you have to think that there's always a high percentage that you have to cut off for the agent that you have to pay. Whereas if you deal with the publisher directly, you get paid.
That's true, you don't pay commission, but for example, if a book is really, really good, then an agent will send it to a number of publishers at the same time, and hopefully at least 2 of them will want it, then you turn it into an auction, and then you can really leverage not just the advance. In fact, quite often, we always look for three key things: the advance, the level of the royalties, and how they'll promote it. And if we have that leverage, we reserve the right to